Finally, the unique art collection by Munch gets the place it deserves. One of the largest single artist museums in the world, the building is over 26,000 square meters and stands at 60 meters tall. With 13 floors and 11 exhibition spaces, it is home to about 27,000 artworks by Edvard Munch, including 1,183 paintings. Oh, by the way, my name is Shruti Ganguly and I'm the director of this film. Designed by Studio Herreros, the building is based on the idea of a tower-shaped museum, where the main functions are organized vertically. As you can see, the staff areas are discreetly visible to museum visitors, and this is in accordance with the architect's objective of making visible the large group of dedicated professionals who work to conserve and display the art to its best advantage. And yes, there's even a library. This space is primarily a research library that manages the collection. It includes all documentation and accrued knowledge about Edvard Munch and makes it available for in-house as well as external research. In fact, Edvard Munch's private library is located behind glass doors in a separate room in this space. I bet you've seen this before. The Scream section is part of Edvard Munch Infinite, where you can experience some of his most world-famous images. You'll be surprised by some unfamiliar masterpieces. And here, you'll get an unexpected glimpse into Munch's multifaceted artistic career. In 1940, Edvard Munch bequeathed his remaining works of art to the city of Oslo and emphasized that the art was a gift to the people of the city. Today, we regard Munch's art as a gift to the entire world and a unique contribution to the world of culture and the arts. Munch never grew tired of exploring the possibilities of art, whether through painting, printmaking, drawing, photography, as well as sculpture. This permanent exhibition takes you into his world, from Munch's ideas, the way he worked, and the deeply human issues he was concerned with, issues that continue to affect us today. Visitors can move freely between the various themes and images that Munch explored throughout his life, the universal narratives of anxiety, death, love, and loneliness. Edvard Munch's sometimes untraditional use of materials and experimental techniques gave his pictures a completely unique appearance. As you can imagine, they also pose a number of challenges for the museum's conservation department, which is responsible not only for the care of the collection, but also for conducting research about it. There's great interest in exhibiting Munch's art at institutions around the world, and some paintings are on loan almost continually. The museum is constantly required to find a balance between looking after the artworks and putting them on display. On the 6th floor, you can experience some of the largest paintings ever created by Munch in a dedicated double-height space. These enormous artworks are versions of the paintings made by Munch for the University of Oslo's ceremonial hall, the Aula. The sun, or solen, is one of Munch's most recognizable images. And besides, who doesn't get a dose of inspiration from it with the sun rays filling the canvas? At the museum store, you'll find numerous art-inspired objects, from books and stationery to apparel, jewelry, puzzles, and posters. If you want to take a piece of Munch home with you, this is where you can buy memorabilia. And there is something for everyone, especially young people. Speaking of young people, the youth demographic is a huge focus for the museum. Here, you'll find workshops, classes, and events for kids of all ages. Did you know that Munch got his start when he was a young boy, encouraged by his Aunt Karen? So not all Karens are so bad. We believe it's really important to spark an artistic dialogue early on. While Munch and his art is indeed a focus, it was a priority for the museum to also have various spaces to convene. There's an amphitheater, as you can see, where you can have meetings and screenings. There's a concert hall on the 2nd floor, as well as on the top floor. And of course, here you have the Munch Deli and Cafe on the ground floor. Settle down for coffee and pastries on the inside, or enjoy them on the terrace facing the Oslo Fjord. This is clearly a popular spot for meeting up with friends. Ride the glass elevator up. The building was a prestigious project for the city of Oslo and designed according to the future-built criterion of at least a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The building has garnered enthusiasm, wonder, and skepticism, and many have been involved in a heated debate. But don't you agree that architecture is so much more than the look of a facade? On the museum's 12th floor, With an incredible view of Bjørvika, you will come to the restaurant Bistro Dolta. The menu includes oysters, tartare, and there's a full a la carte menu. Consider it European flavors with an American flair. And yes, lucky for us, there is even a 13th floor. And here you'll find the cocktail bar Kranen. The museum is committed to creating inclusive and accessible art experiences for all. And we hope that this 13th-floor building will be a place for you to meet Munch, feel inspired, laugh with friends. So please, visit us someday soon.
On the 6th floor of Munch in Oslo, you will find Monumental. All the paintings in this room are drafts for the monumental decorations that Edvard Munch made for the University of Oslo's Aula, its ceremonial hall they built to celebrate their centenary in 1911. From 1908, the university wished to build a large, modern, beautiful hall for ceremonies and celebrations. They also wanted, as part of this project, to have murals on the walls. So they put together a committee to judge a competition for this commission. This was a sought-after commission. Many people wanted it, and it became quite the public controversy in terms of who was on the jury, who would be invited to even join the competition, and who would win it. In the end, and 5 years after the centenary, Edvard Munch's paintings were installed in the wall of the Aula, where they still hang today. So, Edvard Munch got the commission, you might think. Well, no, actually, he didn't. The jury couldn't agree on who should win the commission. So the centenary in 1911 actually opened the Aula with no paintings on the walls. Still, Edvard Munch continued working on the project, and in 1914, a group of private individuals purchased and donated 11 paintings to the university. And these were mounted on the walls of the Aula in 1916. Edvard Munch spent 7 years working on this project. He made over 140 sketches. 11 of the paintings were mounted on the walls, and the remaining paintings were a part of the Edvard Munch bequest to the city of Oslo and became part of the Munch collection. You can see a selection of them here in Monumental. How did Edvard Munch paint these paintings? Well, he actually used the same process as he did with his larger artworks, oil on canvas, instead of creating murals directly on the wall. He spent many years abroad, and in 1909, he returned to Norway and spent the next few years living along the Norwegian coast in different towns like Kragerø and Hvitsten. There he built large outdoor studios to make these massive paintings. He would use a ladder to reach the top. He would paint using a paintbrush, but also other tools, even scratching into the surfaces. He would create large canvases by combining 2, 3, or even as many as 13 pieces of canvases to have these large surfaces to paint on. He would put paint on the canvases in thick layers or in thin washes, in pure color, or also mixing colors together. And for these paintings, he also mixed things into the paint, such as hair or sand to create really thick impasto effect. Or he would mix turpentine into the paint to have it run down the canvas. And what are these paintings about? Well, all of the paintings have themes connected to education, knowledge, enlightenment, and science. This is the sun, the main image in the Aula paintings and in this project. The sun symbolizes enlightenment, which permeates all of the paintings in this room. You see a blazing sun with colorful rays reaching out above the Norwegian landscape of Kragerø. That Edvard Munch used the Norwegian landscape was natural. Only a few years earlier, Norway had gained independence in 1905, and Edvard Munch wanted something specifically Norwegian and universally human. On either side, you see men and women reaching out towards the sun, and the rays from the sun reaching out past the frame toward the world around it. Edvard Munch said of the main images in the aula, the sun, history, and alma mater, that they were like impressive flower arrangements, while the smaller images, such as women turned towards the sun and men turned towards the sun, were supposed to be airier and lighter. What is the largest painting in this room? Well, that would be the Researchers. The Researchers is a whopping 50 square meters. It is 4 meters tall and 11 meters wide. The name, The Researchers, comes from the children playing on the beach, exploring the world around them. In the center is a woman nursing an infant. She is often interpreted as Mother Earth or as the nourishing mother alma mater, giving the milk of scholarship. Edvard Munch wasn't always happy with how this composition worked out, and he changed the composition several times. The painting that actually ended up in the aula was a different painting called Alma Mater. But still, he wasn't happy. And in 1926, he took this painting, The Researchers, and placed it on top of Alma Mater in the aula. Then he removed it, and then he rehung it again in 1939. In 1940, when Norway was occupied by Nazi forces, The Researchers was hanging in the aula with the 11 other paintings. They were removed and kept in the basement of the National Gallery for safekeeping. Something that was fortunate, because in 1943, there was an explosion and a subsequent fire in the aula, which would have led to the destruction of many of these paintings. Not all of Edvard Munch's suggestions for the aula were accepted. Some were rejected. An example of this is the Human Mountain. This painting was one of Edvard Munch's earlier suggestions for the aula. He made a version in 1910-11, and it was rejected by the jury for the main image of the aula. Instead, Edvard Munch came up with the sun, but this image kept interesting him. And in the 1920s, he created a large-scale monumental version in an outdoor studio in his home, Ekeli, outside of Oslo. It shows nude people climbing up a mountain, reaching towards the light. Edvard Munch also continued to paint some paintings after he created the aula paintings, such as War on one side and Peace and the Rainbow on the other. He put them together with the Human Mountain, painted between 1927 and 29, creating a triptych where the Human Mountain is the central image. Edvard Munch is known as a painter and a graphic artist. But did you know that he also made sculptures? He didn't make many, but here is one of his few sculptures. It is also called the Human Mountain and is a plaster sculpture. Edvard Munch probably made this sculpture to help him see in 3 dimensions what his 2-dimensional painting should look like. There really is nothing like coming and seeing these artworks in real life. You might have wondered what this round table in the middle of the room is. At Munch, we have a focus on young people and children, and throughout the whole museum, you can find educational experiences for all ages. So, welcome to Monumental.
Hi, and welcome to the exhibition Uendelig, or Infinite. We at the museum have 27,000 of Edvard Munch's work, and in this exhibition we showcase 76 of his paintings. But there is no right or wrong way, they're not in a chronological order. We have divided them into 12 themes, and today I will talk to you about 3 of those 12 themes, which will be gender, love, and scream. And before we start with our first painting, you can perhaps see that there's a sculpture here. So even though we're going to look at paintings today, he also used to make a lot of sculptures. But the first theme that I'm thinking we should look at is gender. And here he has painted 3 little girls at the bridge. So the painting is called Girls at the Bridge. While he was painting here, he has recently bought a cozy little yellow place at Årskårstrand. So he recalled this summer of being a really pleasant one, a summer that he hadn't experienced in a long time. So you can almost feel the pleasantness in this painting as well. And by having these 3 girls stand on the bridge here, he also made the bridge kind of a symbol of their life, where they first was kids, but being in the middle of the bridge, experiencing adolescence. And when they're done with the bridge, they'll become adult. And I actually really like how he uses this red and green vibrant colors. And he also have another portrait of 3 women actually in the theme love, where he uses the same kind of color palette. So let's go and look at that one. But before we do that, we are going to pass this Alpha and Omega, which is his own origin story, where he's used 22 lithographs to showcase his way of telling how the world started. And here we have actually my favorite, which is the Dance of Life, where you see these 3 women in 3 different phases of their love life. Here, the first woman have this white dress resembling a wedding dress, perhaps, which symbolizes being pure and untouched, and she haven't really met the love of her life yet. While the couple in the middle here, they have perhaps had a dance around here and fallen in love, and they also shape this heart with their arms. And the last lady here, all dressed in black, she has this black dress which symbolizes losing someone and perhaps have loved and lost someone. And both these women are looking at the couple with a longing, either a longing of something that is yet to come or something they've experienced and lost. Edvard Munch here actually used to paint himself in a lot of his paintings. So this painting actually showcases him in love with his first love, Millie Tullow, while the other 2 women being Tuula Larsen, one person he has a really turbulent relationship with. So let's go and look into a painting that showcases their relationship. For hundreds of years, painters used to paint these double portraits, as we can see here. But Edvard Munch painted this double portrait with a twist, because he actually divided it into 2. So by dividing it into 2, he actually shows what happens when a relationship is broken. This can also talk about divorce or being separated. Even though they are apart, there are some parts left in their lives that reminds them of the other one. Like here, we can see Tuula Larsen's hair in his painting, while in Tuula Larsen painting, you see the signature above her head. And Tuula Larsen and Edvard Munch actually had the longest affair of all his lovers. But it ended very dramatic because there was an incident where Edvard Munch actually shot himself in the hand. And till this date, we don't actually know what happened between them. But we know that that incident was such a dramatic event that that actually ended their relationship. And since Edvard Munch was never able to commit to her, she actually went along and married someone else, a 7-year younger artist. So that must have hurt for Edvard Munch. And Edvard Munch here has painted a painting called The Death of Marat, inspired of the tale of Jean-Paul Marat, who was this doctor and journalist and revolutionary who was murdered by his lover one fine evening after he had had a bath. But Edvard Munch here has actually placed him in a bed instead of a bath. And by doing so, he's actually emphasizing how she has betrayed him right after their lovemaking, emphasizing the betrayal of love. Edvard Munch usually, a lot of times, painted himself in the paintings. So Marat here is actually Edvard Munch himself. And he has actually placed his body almost like a martyr, like Jesus Christ on the cross. And being really dramatic here of how he feels betrayed by Tuula Larsen. While Tuula Larsen is standing here really stiffly with almost like guilty eyes, just looking empty towards us. And even though there was a lot of bitterness in the end of the relationship, you actually see this small gesture here where he has painting their hands touching, to almost show that even though there is so much hate right now, there used to be a lot of love between them. And so Tuula Larsen was painted like a really horrific person, almost like a witch. But that's not always how Edvard Munch used to paint women, because we have one really iconic painting where he paints this woman almost like a goddess. And she's none other than Madonna. And Madonna is not just an iconic painting now, but at its time when it was painted, it created a lot of discussion. Some people found it really blasphemic, while others find it really revolutionary. Because here he's actually painted Virgin Mary in a really pleasurable lovemaking scene. But by just placing the glory on her head, he is showing how she is the goddess, because she is actually creating life through this act of lovemaking. And a lot of women actually found it really revolutionary, because it was not objectifying her, or neither was it pornographic, but it was actually showing a woman embracing her own desires and lust. And by just doing this small gesture of placing her arm, like is done here, he actually gives the power to this woman who is actually enjoying this act. So you can actually see that the same kind of color palette resembles the one in Scream. And Scream is, of course, the most iconic painting of Edvard Munch. And the painting is actually inspired by a real incident where he and two of his friends were at this bridge looking over the Oslo fjord, and the sky was actually bloody red. And while standing there looking at the view, Edvard Munch suddenly felt an anxiety about love, an anxiety about life, an anxiety about a world without a god. That experience led to this iconic motif of the Scream. Here at Munch, we have 3 versions of the Scream on view every single day. In a way, the Scream is a self-portrait, but not a portrait of a man, but rather a feeling. Again, the feeling of anxiety. His first attempt of painting the Scream was actually a painting of himself in a hat and a coat, where we could see Munch leaning on the railing of the bridge and looking down at the view with the red sky. But that also didn't scream enough. So he had to put away the trench coat, the hat, and he had to remove all facial features. It wasn't important to showcase that it was him who was at the bridge, but more about the Scream. So you can see that even the mouth, but also the eyes, are 2 big holes and screaming as well. But after he was done with Scream and he felt like he had done everything he could with that motive, he went back to the first motive, which was the despair. And the despair is kind of showcasing more his feelings on the outside, while he might have been screaming on the inside. So I think that's a beautiful painting to end with, if you've seen the Scream. But of course, this was just 3 of the themes I went through today, of gender, love, and Scream. So there are 9 more left, and there are infinite ways to walk around in this space, and of course you can choose the themes that you find more interesting and make your own path through the art space here.